And with that, thank you for coming. And we thank Kevin for coming as well. We'll get started with his presentation. So from an introduction standpoint, it is my privilege to introduce our opening guest speaker, Dr. Kevin Snyder. Kevin is a recovering motivational speaker who has presented to over 1 million people in all 50 states and around the world. From a local standpoint, Kevin was a former Dean of Students at High Point University. Kevin is the author of several books with a bestseller titled Think Differently to Achieve Success, which everyone gets a free copy of today. It's at your desk.
Woo!
Thank you, Kevin.
All right.
He's also sailed around the world, presented a TED Talk, and will even be attempting a Guinness World Record this fall for the longest speech in history. But don't worry, it's a speech he will not be giving us today. Outside of speaking and writing, though, Kevin's personal claim to fame is that he lived his childhood dream of being Bob Barker and winning big on the television game show The Price is Right. So please join me in welcoming our speaker, Kevin. Come on down.
All right. Thank you. Who feels good? All right. Look to your neighbor. Say, I feel good. Now, look to another neighbor and say, you look good. Give him a high five. Inject a little bit of humor. If you're feeling good today, get those jazz hands out just for a second. If you're feeling good, give me 2 claps. You ready? 2 claps. Okay, come on. Twice as loud. 2 claps. There we go. 1 clap. 1 clap. Half clap. Gotcha. Folks, honor for me to be with you today. My name is Kevin Snyder. I'm from Raleigh, North Carolina. Used to be the Dean of Students here at High Point, so it's a privilege for me to be back here in the great town of High Point, North Carolina. Now, what we're going to be talking about today are some ways to really elevate our game in 2020. Some of you might already be starting off pretty strong in 2020. And some of you might already be thinking, hey, I'm still trying to catch up to yesterday. Right? But today I'm going to share with you just a few principles that will help us elevate our game to vision not just 2020 and make 2020 the best year of life, but also how to think beyond 2020. Does that sound good? All right. So I always like to get to know my audiences just a little bit before I present. How many of you have ever heard the song Don't Stop Believing? Anybody? Any Journey fans? All right. So in just a moment, I'm going to play that song for you. And we're having a little competition called Keynote Karaoke. Now, I'm not looking for the best singer. I'm looking for the best performer. First verse is going to be my ladies. Second verse is going to be my guys. So ladies, where are you? Say hi.
Hi.
That's pretty good. Okay, guys, give me a hey.
Hey.
All right, good. Now, for each top performer, so ladies first verse, guys, you're the second verse, the winner get a free copy of my book. And after the presentation, I'll sign it and I'll double the value. All right? So, if you're feeling good today, here we go. I'm looking for ladies, my first verse. Guys, you're my second verse. Here we go. Now, one thing, if we all put our hands up and sway, if we all do it, it doesn't look weird. But if you're the only person not doing it, it might look a little weird. Here we go, come on. All right, here we go. Ladies. Here we go. Living in a lonely world. She took the midnight train. There we go. All right, guys, twice as loud. You ready? There we go, guys. Come on. All right, good job, good job. Now, look to somebody sitting right next to you, give them a high five and say, hey, you sound pretty good today. All right. Well, there is a reason why we start off with this song. Not only do I believe that it is the best song ever made, is there any offense? But let's just reflect on a moment. Isn't this also a way of life? Don't stop believing. Yes or yes? Yes. The number one determinant of our success is going to be what we believe. Behind every success story is someone who believed in themselves, who believed in their goals. Behind every great accomplishment that you've had in your life was a time where you really believed in what you were pursuing. So our beliefs result in self-motivation. Our beliefs is where it all starts. It's the foundation. The challenge is many of us believe our doubts and we doubt our beliefs, which then impacts our results. So the key really is understanding how powerful our beliefs are and being aware of where they come from. So turn to your neighbor and just say this simple phrase. The key is believing. It's the number one determinant of our success. And the number one determinant of an organization's success is its people who believe. But the reality is this is not easy. This is very difficult. Now, our minds are fertile soil. Our thoughts are seeds, and what we plant will grow. So I looked this up on the internet, so I know it's true. Humor. Our beliefs come from our thoughts, right? Our beliefs come from our thoughts. How many of you will admit, if you'll be brave enough to admit, by show of hands, how many of you have had a thought today already? Raise your hand. All right, now look around. If you see somebody with their hand not up, please check their pulse, right? We have thousands of thoughts every single day. And the American Psychological Association came out with a report last year that said 73% of the average person's thoughts are negative on a daily basis. What percent? 73%. We have an epidemic right now, leading to stress and anxiety. Now, some of you might be thinking, 73%, Kevin, that's way too low. You don't know my wife, or you don't know my husband, right? And some of you might be thinking, why, that sounds pretty high. We all have moments of self-doubt. We all have that internal head trash. I call it self-talk. We all have it. And anybody that says that they don't have it is either lying to you or they're lying to themselves. We all struggle with this. And even I struggle with this. Everything that I share with you, if it's okay with you, let me be transparent and just honest with you. Everything I share with you in this short presentation, I struggle with sometimes. I've researched leadership. I've researched positive psychology and mental health for over 20 years. I have a doctorate degree in self-efficacy. I have a doctorate degree in everything I'm sharing with you. I've written a book on it. I still struggle with this. But I'm aware of when I'm struggling. And that's the engine of growth. When we're aware, we can then make a change. And sometimes my awareness comes from my wife, who says, you need to read chapter 2 today, like right now. But is that okay that I just shared that with you? Yes. Good. Because that's the way that we're also going to connect and how you can connect with others when we're just simply transparent and real. So yes, there's parts of this presentation where you might think to yourself, all right, motivation boy, tell me something I don't know. Good. When you have that moment, I want you to ask yourself, okay, I'm aware of this, I know this, but am I applying it? Or I'm aware of this, am I helping someone else who's battling with it right now? Maybe Kevin just shared with me a principle that I can help someone else in my life. Maybe somebody else on my team. Maybe somebody else back home. So whatever connects with you in the next just very few minutes that we have together, whatever connects with you is going to connect with you for a reason. And I really want you to pay attention to that. I'm more interested in you taking action than taking notes. And nothing like the present will help us kick off 2020 like never before. So I'll share this slide deck with you afterward if you like. Any of my images that you see, I'm going to go through a few fairly quick. You'll see a lot of quotes. Anything that you want, I'll send this to you. I'll send the slide deck to Allison and she can forward it to you or reach out to me individually. Okay? But the reality is this concept of being aware of our thoughts. Okay, I'm aware, but maybe my circumstances aren't ideal right now. Maybe the environment that I'm in is kind of tough. Well, remember, our mind's the fertile soil. Our thoughts are seeds. What we plant will grow. Did this plant have a choice where it found itself? No or no? No, it didn't. But it still made a choice by the laws of nature. This plant still made a choice to do what? It made a choice to grow. And many of the leadership best practices come from laws of nature. See, what I've discovered about adversity, the world's full of adversity. The world's also full of overcoming it. I just heard an amen. Preach it, right? But the world is full of overcoming it. And adversity doesn't define us, even when the circumstances just sound or feel so unfortunate. They reveal our character. They don't define it. So we have a choice to push through. I'll give you some acronyms today. This is one of them. Everybody say it with me. Say push. Push. Now, does some brave soul want to say, hey, this is what push stands for, Kevin? I'm reading it on your screen. What does push stand for? Persist until something happens. And this is a common denominator of extraordinary leadership and people that just crush through their goals. Even when they don't feel like it, they still know they've got to push through in order to grow. And it's not easy. But when we need to apply it is when it matters the most. Okay? When we need it, it's when it matters the most. Now, this is not a picture of my front yard. I wish it was. Now, there's probably a lawn buff in here somewhere. But if we want a new yard that looks like this in the spring, what should we have already done this past fall? It starts with an A. Aerate. Repeat with me. Say aerate. Aerate. Now, I didn't know what aerating was until a few years ago. My wife and I got married. I used to live on a sailboat. I didn't have a yard. I didn't want one. That's a whole other presentation. All right? But I lived on a sailboat. Well, my wife and I, when we got engaged, first thing she said to me after yes was, you know I'm not living on that boat. And we got our first house, and the yard looked terrible. The yard was absolutely horrible. Well, that's when I became familiar with aerating. Now, what does an aerator do if you want a yard that looks that green? What does an aerator actually do? Okay, so it's this big metal machine, and it's got these big spikes in here that you can see, and these spikes go into the ground, right? And those spikes create holes so that seed and fertilizer will go in, right? Because what will grow a few months later? New grass. So we have to plant new seed in order to expect something new to grow. The challenge is we can't expect change if we're not willing to make one. Think about that. We can't expect anything new in 2020 if we're not doing something a little bit different. You know, Einstein even defined that as insanity. Doing the same thing, yet expecting a different result. So in this case, law of nature would say, hey, if I want a more beautiful yard in the spring, well, I should have already aerated. Now, the beautiful thing is, as human beings, we're a little bit more equipped than maybe grass seed. Every day is an opportunity to plant new seed. We don't have to do it just in the fall. We could do it every single day. In my presentations, I tell folks, look, don't set a New Year's resolution once a year. Set a New Year's resolution once a week. We can always reinvent. And it's organizations that constantly reinvent and look forward to opportunities to evolve that stay relevant and make sure that they don't get tunnel vision and become obsolete. Now, there's one more thing about this aerator, though. It doesn't just plant seed, and you hit it. You said it right up front. It's not that it's just planting new seed and where fertilizer can grow. It's also doing what? It's also taking out the soil that's not growing. And this is where we have to be kind of aware of what might be surrounding us right now. What are some things that might be negative or things that aren't going to help you push through to that next level in 2020? And ask yourself, is this within my circle of control that I can influence? Maybe it is, maybe it's not. But what are some of those things that might hold you back? The only limitations are the ones that we place there, or the ones that we allow to stay. So an aerator also pulls out some things that just, they're not working, they're not growing. So the good opportunity is that we've got that chance to do that when we're aware. But the key is we have to be aware. We have to be able to aerate our mind just like we would want to aerate our yard. Does that make sense? So 2020 vision, folks, and beyond really starts with what we believe. And the foundation of our beliefs come from what? Come from our thoughts. When I was 12 years old, I was diagnosed with depression. I grew up in Durham, North Carolina. And I'll never forget the day where my mom picked me up from school. I was called to the principal's office. She knew something was going terribly wrong with me. And she took me to the doctor. The doctor diagnosed me with depression and also an eating disorder called anorexia. I just refused to eat, and my body had begun to shut down. Now, it took me several years to get through that. And this was in the 80s. Think of the 80s. They didn't know what to do with me. I was the first adolescent young boy that had ever battled depression or anorexia to the doctor. They had no clue what to do with me. But they did the best thing for me was to get me in professional counseling, even at a young age of 12. Now, there's more to the story there, and if you have a copy of my book, which you all do, then I have a whole chapter in my book called Turning Point, and I talk through about how I got better. And the reason I share that story with you, because I used to hide it. I used to not want to let people know that I battled depression, because I was supposed to be strong as a motivational speaker. Right? It's a sign of weakness if I tell people all the battles I've been. No, what I've discovered is your struggles develop your strength. And when I talk about my anorexia or my depression or my arrest, when I shoplifted and took something that didn't belong to me, you know what connects more to my audiences than any of my leadership content? The stories of my mistakes. Because some of you in this room have somebody in your life that's gone through something similar, and you're looking for maybe a way to help. Or perhaps you're going through it or have been through it, and you've been carrying it with you. So guess what? If we can use it for good, it gives it purpose. And the way that I use my mistakes for good is through my presentations to other people, especially college students and high school students, but also professionals like you. I want them to feel not alone like I did when I was 12. Because I almost ended my life on numerous occasions. But one turning point, the turning point that I had was when my counselor asked me one day, after a year of counseling, she finally said to me, Kevin, what will you do when you're driving home and a song on the radio comes on that you don't like? What will you do? And just think about it. What would you do if a song came on the radio, you're like, ew, I don't like this song. What would you do? You change the station. You know? She said, Kevin, just because you have that inside voice, doesn't mean you have to agree with it. So think about that just for a moment. Just because we have that inside voice, just because that self-talk that we have, that internal head trash, says things to us that we don't like, guess what? We don't have to agree with it. You'd be like, oh, thanks. And guess what you do? You focus on something positive. Or you put yourself in a state where like, hey, I'm gonna change that station. That's what saved my life. And that's something that we can all do. Now, some of us might be surrounded by people who, what I call energy vampires, right? And if you're laughing, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But there's two types of energy, the energy that's created and the energy that is killed. So we have to ask ourselves, hey, what kind of energy am I bringing to this relationship? What kind of energy am I bringing to this committee meeting? What kind of energy am I bringing to my team? Because it's either killed or created. So we have to also be mindful of the energy that we're bringing and the positivity that we're surrounded by to change that station. So you'll read more about that in the book. And I'll be here after the presentation too, if you have any questions. Because that is a pretty sensitive topic, but it all starts with how we think. And self-motivation has business results. How many of you If you don't mind me asking, how many of you have to be self-motivated to do what you do? Raise your hand. Yeah, we all do. Self-motivation has business results. So this is an important topic, just to set the foundation. So as success principle number 2, once we get through the foundation of believing and understanding how important that is, to have the right mindset, a resilient mindset, is, okay, change is one thing, but is it leading me to growth? People tell me all the time, Kevin, people fear change. I've worked with many brands across the world. Toshiba, Anheuser-Busch, FedEx. Change is usually a common topic that executives want me to share. And what I say to them is, people don't fear change. Your employees don't fear change. What they fear is the uncertainty that change represents. Think about that. Because we can change without growth, but we cannot grow without having change. So if I'm growing, that means I'm going to have to do what? I'm going to have to change. So if we're aerating our yard, aerating our mind, something is going to have to change in order to grow. So let's do this. Let's get rid of the word change and replace it with what? Let's replace it with growth. And just by doing that, doesn't that get you feeling a little bit more excited about it? It's a paradigm shift. And if you have a leadership role here at KAO, or guess what? You're a leader at home. You're a leader in the community. Whatever else you're involved with, you're a leader in some way. Now you got to ask yourself, okay, am I getting other people excited about growth? And if so, they're going to want to change. Repeat that with me. Say, change is inevitable. Change is inevitable. Growth is optional. Do you agree with that? Good. So here's an example, some business results. In 1955, Edward Schultz created the Fortune 500 list. Now the Fortune 500 list is your top 500 companies in revenue. It started in 1945. So here we are, many, many years later. How many companies do you think are still around on that list that were initially on it when it first started? How many companies play little Price is Right? Okay? Throw me a number, and I'll tell you to go up or down. 5, up. 10, up. 20, up. 100, down. 50. Ding, ding, ding. Who said 50? Yes? All right. Good job. Get a book. 50 companies, 50 organizations, plus or minus, we'll see what happens this week, right, are now remaining on the Fortune 500 list. Anybody here ever heard of Kodak? If you've got kids, they probably haven't. Anybody here ever heard of Blockbuster? Guess what? If you have kids, they probably haven't. What happened to Blockbuster? Blockbuster got Netflixed. Anybody here ever had a Sony Walkman? If you still have one, keep it. It's probably worth a lot of money. These three companies that produce these products, what happened? They became resistant to change. And as a result, they couldn't grow. See, organizations can't grow unless their people do. That's why this is so important for us to have a growth mindset. Otherwise, we will become obsolete. If we're not changing and our competitor is, what's going to happen? We'll get Netflixed. Something will happen. And I believe there's 3 types of people. We talk about 2 types of energy, killed or created. Well, there's 3 types of people. People that make things happen, people that watch things happen, and then people that wonder, what just happened? Which would you rather be? I think we'd all want to be the people that make things happen. Right? And here's just a case study of why it's so important. And even Darwin said this about survival in the animal kingdom. It's not the strongest of the species that survive, but the ones most responsive to change. Well, we have a leg up on the animal species. We're not designed to survive or endure. We're designed to thrive. So we, as successful leaders, or if we want to be, we have a responsibility to grow. Not just change, that's reactive. We have a responsibility to grow. Would you agree with that? The challenge is, how do we do that? How do we innovate? How do we stay relevant? How do we not become obsolete? Well, I'm going to share some tips with you in the next 2 steps. But we have to make sure we understand why it's important first before we can start to figure out the how. So it all starts with a growth mindset, and that's the key. If we have a fixed mindset, thinking things will always stay the same, are we changing or are we growing? We're just going to be changing. We're not probably going to be growing. We'll be wondering what happened a year from now. But the good news is, in 2020, we can make sure that we're planting the right seeds to prevent that from happening. So 2020 and beyond starts with our beliefs, and number 2 would be having a growth mindset. We're halfway done. How do you feel? Painful yet? Good. So we can change without growth, but we cannot grow without having some change. So people, remember, they don't fear change. They fear what? The uncertainty that change can represent. So let's get people excited about where we're going to be 6 months from now, 1 year from now, 5 years from now. Begin with the end in mind. And that is 2020 and beyond. That absolutely is 2020 and beyond. Now, the third success strategy, third best practice, is a common denominator of all extraordinary leaders. I researched hundreds of extraordinary leaders to know what is the common theme, the common denominator of their success. This was the essence of my TEDx talk, which you can watch. I actually did it at Wake Forest here, TEDx Wake Forest U, a couple years ago. And what I did was I studied as many leaders as I could possibly find. Here's just a short snapshot of a few of them. And a tip, if you ever do a research study, make sure you keep it small. Don't try to exhaust it. But what I discovered pretty quick was there is no common denominator of how they did it, because they all do it differently. And by the way, what is success even mean? We all have a personal definition to success. What it might mean to you might be different than me. But how do I achieve my goals? And here's the common denominator that I did find. Look at all these people. Some of their faces you know. I'll share with you some stories about them in just a moment. Were they all visionary? Yes. They all had a vision for what they wanted to accomplish. And some of them knew it would not even manifest or occur in their lifetime. But they didn't let that stop them from visioning it. You know, the greatest inventions ever all started with just a thought, an idea. And then the belief kicked in. Well, why not? Why can't I do that? Have any of you ever been at a store and you're looking at a product and it looks so simple in the aisle and you're thinking, I thought of that, right? I think we've all had that. Well, the difference between us and the person who invented it was what? Action. But it starts with the vision. So you're a visionary. These folks, and visioning, it is a verb. It is not a noun. We're not just saying, hey, be a visionary leader. No, we have to vision what it is that we want to accomplish. And when we decide it in our mind, when we truly vision it, when we decide it in our mind, it becomes only a matter of time. It's probably not going to happen overnight. And you may not even know how it'll occur. But you got to start with believing it, and then you got to work backward. We'll talk about that in the next step. So let me share with you a few of these individuals. 1954, this is one of my favorite examples. 1954, Roger Bannister did something that everybody around him said was cray-cray. Everybody around him said it's impossible for you to achieve that. You shouldn't even try it. Now, does anybody know who Roger Bannister is?
4-minute mile.
Yeah, 4-minute mile. Thank you. The 4-minute mile. Now, what the 4-minute mile is somebody that ran 1 mile quicker than 4 minutes. Well, in 1954, up until then, it had never been done. So guess what everybody assumed? Well, it's never been done, so I guess we can't do it. Until Roger Bannister. Now, did Roger Bannister break the 4-minute mile just overnight? Nah. In fact, share with me real quick, just throw out 2 or 3 leadership descriptors about him that do you feel helped him push through to accomplish that vision that he had. What about Roger? What made him unique, do you think? Yeah, he believed. Thank you for anchoring to that. Yeah, he believed.
She's a doctor. She had a strong profession, but I forgot what it was.
Good. He wasn't a physical doctor. He was educated, right? So he had some understanding of body and practice. So excellent. Yes. What else? Perseverance. One more.
Physical strength.
Determination, and he had physical strength because he practiced. You know, a quote by Tony Robbins is this: repetition is the mother of skill. If you want to be good at something, what do you got to do? You got to practice. You got to keep practice. Now, of all those leadership descriptors, thank you, I didn't hear steroids. Thank you. Let's give him a good pair of running shoes. But did he have a vision for breaking the 4-minute mile? Yes or yes? Absolutely. Even despite all the naysayers around him that said he was crazy, that it would never be done. Has anybody ever told you that you can't do something? Probably. Yeah, just yesterday. Right? Well, if they haven't, be prepared, because that will eventually happen. And what I want you to do is go back, anchor this moment right now. Next time somebody says to you that you can't do something, just smile at them and say, thank you. And then proudly let them watch you do it. To me, that is empowerment. That's how we change the world. What's most important isn't what anybody else thinks. What's most important is what you believe, what I believe, what we believe. That's what makes this world a better place. That's how we all make a difference, when we are still able to push through the negativity. And sometimes we just have to be our own yaysayer. And visionaries teach us how to do that. They remind us that that's important. Because all of you have been visionaries throughout your life in some ways. Your greatest accomplishments started probably from you being a visionary at some point. Like, this is what I want to accomplish. Now get out of my way. Now, or I got to figure it out. Who said this? I am the greatest. Right. And guess what? He started saying that before he was. Was he a visionary? Absolutely. Who's this? J.K. Rowling, who wrote Harry Potter. Now, some of you might know the story of her. What's the real story of her success? It wasn't just that she wrote one of the best-selling books of all time, up until 50 Shades of Grey, but that's a different program. Yeah, before she was published, she was unemployed. She was a struggling single mom on welfare. In the UK, they call that benefits. And she wrote Harry Potter on a napkin. They outlined that on a napkin when she was at rock bottom. And she credits her being at rock bottom because she says, I had nowhere else to look. I said to myself, it can't get any worse. Well, guess what? Was she a visionary? Absolutely. And that was unique to her. That was unique to her. Now, let me give you a short story, a business example of this. In 1991, there was a business owner that took control of a new small company in Seattle, Washington. Sales were down, profits were low, morale sinking, right? Well, this was the owner of the Pike Place Fish Market in Seattle, Washington. New owner went to his people and said, we've got to make a change. This company's not going to be around in the next few months unless we do something different. And I don't even know what that means. But this new owner, John Yakimoto, empowered his people to think differently and gave them a new belief and equipped them to be a visionary. So what did this fish market decide to do that eventually caught on? And this is the reason we're talking about them today. Give you an example. Spoiler alert. Right. You probably have heard this story. The Pike's Place Fish Market in Seattle, Washington, where they're engaging with their customers in a different way. To get them to be customers, they've got to get people to come to their fish store first. And by the way, this is a fish market on the bay in Seattle where there's over 15 other fish markets. What's their product? Fish. The product is no different. So if these individuals Could they walk over to the next fish store or fish market and get the same salmon? Yeah. So this fish market knew it didn't just have to differentiate in their product. It had to differentiate in how they did it, how they sold it. Now, normally I'd pick a volunteer and I'd show you how this works, but I think we have some sprinkler systems here. I don't want to do that. But ultimately, if you're going to buy a pound of salmon, what are they going to do? They're going to have you go behind the counter. And they're all going to chant for you. They're going to say, your name, what's your name, by the way? We'll do a little practice here. Your name? Jody. So Jody's going to come. She says, hey, I'll get a pound of salmon. And we're all going to be employees at the fish market. We're all going to say, pound of salmon for Jody. And then I'm going to throw that fish to her. You want to do it? No. Let's at least chant it. So Jody just asked for a pound of salmon. Ask me.
I want a pound of salmon.
Pound of salmon for Jody. And then Jody catches it. Here's Jody. This is a little much. Right? But this fish market decided to do things a little bit differently. So here I am now. I was speaking there a few years ago, and I decided I'm going to go walk down to the Pike Place Fish Market, see if they're walking their talk. Bought my pound of salmon. I looked over at the guy to the right. His name's Justin. I looked over at the guy to the left. His name is Sammy. And I said, tell me about your schedule. What do you guys, like, what's your daily activity like? Because you seem to love what you do. Well, guess what? Justin told me they wake up at 4 a.m., have to be at work at 5. They shovel ice for 3 hours while they're waiting for the fish to come in. So they shovel ice for 3 hours. The fish come in. They unload the dead fish on the ice. That takes 2 hours. And then they sell dead fish from about 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. every single day. And guess what they do the next day? The same thing. When you love what you do, does it show? When you don't love what you do, might it show? Right. How many of you are married to that person? Anybody? No, but we've all been there. I've been there. I had a job that I just did not like, and most of the reason was because I didn't get along with my supervisor. 3 out of 4 people say their top stressor is their boss, not what they do. So for those of you in a leadership role, think about that. Think, how do we empower people? How do we get them on board to row in the same direction and envision new opportunity, new possibility? So what did this fish market do to create a new product? Because the new product was what? It wasn't fish. The experience with the customer, which is the new marketing, folks. We are in an experience era right now. People can customize everything, and that's what they're looking for. They want to customize their sandwiches. They want to customize their phone. They want to have experiences that they have involvement with. We're in the experience era right now. So we always have to be thinking of, okay, maybe I can't throw fish. I can't throw fish, Kevin, here at KAO. I can't do that. Right. I get that. Okay. But what can we do? That's the thing. That's what you've got to think about is what can we do that might be outside the box or innovative or maybe something we've never done before. And yeah, there might be somebody that says we're crazy or that we can't do it. But that means we then might just have to be strategic and plan it out and build our team. There's different ways of doing that. But ultimately, we have to realize our product isn't actually our product sometimes. The product is the experience and how we do it. And the fish philosophy is a great example of that. When I spoke for Disney last year, Bob Iger, I heard him talk about the experience era. And Disney is magical with this. They're all about creating experiences with the customers so that they can build a relationship with them as well. And when we create experiences, that's ultimately what we're able to do with customers so they become raving fans. And they talk about us like we're talking about the Pike Place Fish Market. They didn't pay me to mention their name. But it's because of the experience they provide that makes us want to talk about it and share it with others. And it all starts with one person who became a visionary and empowered a small team of people that decided to throw fish one day. So our biggest challenge today isn't just how we think, it's what we're thinking about for tomorrow as well. Okay? So let me give you a personal example of this as well, a real quick short story. When I was 15 years old, I set a dream one day that I was going to be meeting Bob Barker and be on The Price is Right. Think about when you're a young kid, right? When you're a young kid, anything's possible. Well, when I was a young kid and after I'd battled through some of my depression, one of the questions my counselor asked me is, what do you look forward to? She was trying to get me to focus on something positive. Well, guess what? Every single day at 11 a.m., I watch The Price is Right. Any Price is Right fans in here? Any of you ever yell at the TV when somebody makes a stupid bid? Yeah. If you didn't raise your hand, you're probably lying. But growing up, my mom, she'd take me to the grocery store. She'd be shopping for groceries. What do you think I was doing? I was studying grocery prices. A 15-year-old should not know the price of Metamucil. I went to college, wrote my first paper in English on The Price is Right. Teacher gave me the grade back, gave me the paper back and said, Kevin, I want you to come to my office. I want to talk to you. I opened up the paper to look at the grade, and it was C, me after class. Dr. Adams looked at me, she goes, Kevin, I don't know your story. She's like, I can tell there's something unique about you and your passion for wanting to meet Bob Barker and be on The Price is Right. But she said, in all my years of teaching, this is the best paper I've ever read. But you need help. And that's when I realized, okay, maybe I like this show more than most people. But when Dr. Adams told me that I was really good at writing, what do you think I started to believe? Maybe I'm pretty good at writing. See, our thoughts are seeds. So are the words that we use. Not just the words with ourselves, that internal head talk, that head trash. It's also the words we use with others. One of the best ways to motivate somebody around you, identify something they're good at, and do what? Tell them. Even if you have to make it up. Watch them perform differently. Watch them shine. Now, I just had a vision of meeting Bob Barker. Yes, it was a dream. I didn't know how. And that's very important too, because sometimes we don't start working toward our dream because we just don't have a plan in place. Sometimes this is personality style too. Remember, the greatest inventions all started with a thought, and they work backward to create it. So I was at a leadership conference the summer before my senior year, and I meet a guy at this conference who was on The Price is Right. His name was Chris. And when Chris told me how to get on The Price is Right, because that's all we talked about for 3 days, I said, Chris, that's awesome. So all you're telling me is that I got to come all the way out to California, and you're going to get a group together, we're going to go out, and you're going to plug me, and they're going to pick me, right? Because that's what they did for him. He goes, absolutely. So I order tickets. I get the tickets in the mail. I'm living in North Carolina. Get the ticket in the mail, and I realized the only date they had left was the same date as my college graduation. So I skipped my college graduation, drove across the country. Get all the way there, the show was canceled. Bob was sick with laryngitis. So when I got home, my mom gave me a big hug. Big hug in the driveway. She goes, how bad do you want it? Now, I didn't know my mom was a motivational speaker. But when my mom asked me that question, how bad do you want it? I realized I wanted it really bad. Even if it was a silly story, a silly dream, to everybody but me. Went up to the computer, ordered tickets again, bought a flight. 6 months later, check this out.
Here it comes to the Bob Barker Studio at CBS in Hollywood. Those are most exciting hour of fantastic prizes. The fabulous 60-minute Price is Right. Kevin Snyder, come on in. Right here is the first item up for bid. How about this gorgeous diamond and sapphire bracelet? Retail price $16.25.
Now, folks, that was the dream. Now, time is short. The video is about 7 minutes long, so we're not going to watch the whole video. But if you want, go to my website or just type up Kevin Snyder lives dream of meeting Bob Barker. Because the whole point of the story, this is not about me or The Price is Right. This is about you living your dream. How does this story relate to you? Here I was at 22 years old, a kid that battled depression, a kid that almost didn't make it through teenage years, now is living a dream simply because he had one. This was the vision that I had at 15 years old. I didn't understand it, but I had a vision for what I wanted to accomplish. And what I discovered about dreams is, most of us, we have dreams when we're sleeping. But visionaries have dreams when they're awake, and they make them. Which would you like to be in? Which one of those? So the question I have for you right now is this. What leap are you willing to take? There's going to be some risk involved. What's your price is right? And if you have one, awesome. Maybe you had one. I want to remind you of that. Maybe it's been dormant for a while. Or maybe I'm just an itch on you today to get you to realize how important it is to dream and to dream big. And maybe dream so big that it scares you and it might scare other people. One of my litmus tests is if somebody doesn't tell me my dream sounds crazy, guess what? It ain't big enough. If I know exactly how I'm going to accomplish my dream, guess what? It's not big enough. So don't let that stop you. Life lives up to the expectations we set. And in order for a goldfish to grow, it's got to get into a bigger tank. Same thing with our minds. We got to think big. We got to think, okay, there's all sorts of reasons why we can't or shouldn't do something. We have to focus on reasons why we should. For me, that was The Price is Right. My wife and I, too, we decided a couple years ago, we want to start making a family or having a family. And it was a challenge for us. Until one day we got the great news that, hey, we're pregnant. Or my wife's pregnant. She had the baby. And then I have some people say, oh, you had the baby. Oh, okay. But there she is, holding her. I know many of you have children as well. And they're one of your proudest accomplishments. Her first zucchini from the garden. First obnoxious hat. First professional headshot. Right? But everything requires a vision to get started. And now the question again becomes for you. Our time's short today. What's your price is right? What's your dream? And you've got to vision it. You've got to see it in your mind as if it's only a matter of time. Because people want to follow a person who's a visionary. They want to follow that. Anybody want to share real quick? If you have a vision and you're willing to share it with the group and kind of speak it to the manifestation, because we're 50% more likely to achieve a goal when we write it down. We're 70% more likely to achieve a goal when we tell somebody. Anybody here want to share? What's your price is right? What do you vision? Is there something that you believe that will happen in your life in any amount of time? Yeah.
I'd like to complete my doctorate degree in the near future.
All right. Allison says complete her doctorate degree in the near future. Give her 2 claps for that. Absolutely. We should talk. Absolutely. Thank you. One more person.
I always wanted to see as many places in the world as I can, and I always trying to go to new places.
Absolutely. 2 claps. Anybody else?
I will complete my CPA in the near future.
Your name?
Linda.
Linda says complete her CPA in the near future. 2 claps. When's the near future?
This year.
This year. So 2020. All right. Good. Now, will that require some risk? Yeah. Will that require maybe some adversity along the way, some things you don't expect. Yeah, absolutely. But that doesn't mean we still can't push through. So in the essence of time, let me click through a couple slides here for you. To get to our fourth point before we close is this. We can't just vision it. Vision without action is nothing but a daydream. In fact, repeat that with me. Say this. Vision without action is just a daydream. Action changes things. Action changes things. Now, I should go to the gym more often than I do. I usually don't look forward to going to the gym, but guess what? Afterward, I'm always glad I did. Only reason I have a doctorate degree is because I woke up at 4 a.m., not because I'm smart. Hard work will always beat talent when talent doesn't work hard. Even Amelia Earhart said this, the hardest thing is just to act. Everything else is just tenacity, which is the grit to keep acting. That can be one of the toughest things to do sometimes, is just to make that choice to act. Now, success isn't that straight line. What is success? It's those squigglies, right? It's working through that adversity, the naysayers, that imposter syndrome that we ourselves might have, and it might hold us back, right? So when we went to the moon for the first time, and for you conspiracy theorists, let's just say we did. In the 60s, the most brilliant minds had to figure out how to get to the moon because JFK, our president, said we would. He was a visionary. He said we were going to the moon before we knew how. And the most brilliant minds got together and said, okay, we got to figure this out. And what percent of the time do you think we were actually on track with the trajectory that they had? What percent of the time? Price is right. What do you think? I heard 0, up, but close. 10, down. 2, up, but close. 5, down. 3, ding, 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 ding. Good job. 3% of the time. So 97% of the time, what do we have to do? We had to adapt. We had to be flexible. When we're pursuing something for the very first time, or if we're pushing ourselves to grow, not everything is going to go according to plan. And extraordinary leaders and extraordinary organizations, they expect that. That way they're not surprised. And then they say, what do we need to do to get back on track, to grow? So the squigglies is where the success lies. Repeat after me. Squigglies is where the success lies. Good. But a lot of us too, we drive that car, in life, we're looking through that rearview mirror. You don't drive a car through a rearview mirror when you're going home today. Now, you might be looking in your rearview mirror, but it's to look see what's coming up from behind. No, we drive life. We've got to be moving forward. Now, that rearview mirror is there for perspective. Anytime we make a mistake or if there's something that didn't go the right, we can always ask ourselves positive questions. What can we learn from that? How does that make us better? Right? Ask yourself negative questions. Well, you're probably going to get a negative answer. Why do we always let this happen? No, we want to ask ourselves positive questions. So what I want to share with you in closing is the example of skydiving. How many of you have ever been skydiving? Anybody? All right, we got one brave soul. All right, what's your name?
Mark.
Mark. Everybody know that about Mark? He's jumped out of a perfectly good plane. Anybody else been skydiving? Okay, Mark, tell us, what was it, or how were you feeling when you were jumping out of that plane for the very first time?
Like that plane was going to crash if I didn't get out of it. That was the worst plane I've ever been in.
Really? So the first plane you got in, you jumped out of?
Yes.
Interesting. Now, this is a video of my jump. A lot of people don't realize when you're jumping out of a plane, you don't have that drop feeling in your stomach. You might expect that, but your body instantly catches up with you, and then you're just floating down to earth as like someone's underneath you with a really big hairdryer, blowing up. And about 5,000 feet, they'll pull the cord. This is a tandem jump. The chute comes out. Mark and I are both here, so that means we landed, right? And Mark, what did you want to do when you landed?
I wanted to do it again.
Mark wanted to do what?
Do it again.
Do it again. And when I ask that question to my audiences, 99.9% of the time, people always say they wanted to do it again. So what can skydiving teach us about achieving our goals? About inspiring other people as well? Feel the fear, do it anyway. Because extraordinary leaders are comfortable being a little uncomfortable. They expect being uncomfortable. That's a sign of them doing something different or pushing through. So what we've got to do as well is being able to ask ourselves, what comfort zone am I going to push through to make 2020 the best year I've ever had? Not just here at KAO, but also maybe in my personal life, my personal goals, and in my relationships. Because that's where the magic happens. We all have something that we have to jump through right now. We all have something we've got to push through. And anybody that tells you they didn't is either lying to you or they're lying to themselves, or both. So it's all good. We're all human. We've all got opportunity. What matters is what we do with it. So 2020 vision and beyond, let's do a little brief recap. Starts with what? Our beliefs. Then our decision to do what? Starts with a G. Grow. To grow. Third, starts with a V. The vision. There we go. And then lastly, to act on that vision. Because action changes things. My name's Kevin Snyder. Help control the pet population. Have your pet spayed and neutered. Goodbye, everybody. Okay. Thank you very much.